Just the Luka the dice. Hello there, Wargamers, and welcome to MiniWarGaming's first impression review of the new Ossiarch Bonereapers. You are joined here by Luka at MiniWarGaming. Now, I am here to talk about the highly anticipated, I'm assuming by a lot of you, release of this new Death Army, the Ossiarch Bonereapers. Now, there's already a lot of Death Armies in Age of Sigmar. Unfortunately, lacking in destruction, I'd say. Though the Ogres just came out at the exact same time, and I'm actually not too certain when we're having the review up for them. I think it is this Saturday coming up. Well, whatever, you know. It's going to be paired with this one going out, I believe. And if I lied, well, I apologize. But I'm here to talk about the Bonereapers and all of their magnificence. Now, I have played a first impressions game already with my test subject, Jasper, and that is in the MiniWarGaming Vault. So after you sit down and listen to this review, or first impressions, a proper review will maybe come later. This is just me flipping through the book a couple of times and giving you my ideas of it. You want to check out that game, it's in the vault, it's in the link down below, and it was 1,300 points. I used the new box set that came out for them, the only available way to acquire the Ossiarch Bonereapers. And that was again, 1,300 points. You get about 840 points in the battalion, but I was using the new terrain feature and I was using one of the new endless spells. We have all three of them. I chose this one because it was my favorite and I thought it looked really cool. Again, click the link down below to check that game out after this review if you want to. You can sign yourself up for a 7-day free trial for the MiniWarGaming Vault. You can cancel right afterwards if you want to. We just find that most people tend to stick around after they sign up. We have a lot to offer in the Vault. End of plug. Let's talk about the Bonereapers. Now, this is, if I had to compare it to one thing, it is the Stormcast Eternals, but the death version. With the Stormcast Eternals, you have Sigmar shaping the souls of his warriors in this, well, Sigmarite clad armor, right? Now, here we have Nagash stuffing souls into bone constructs, and they are a self-sufficient force, right? They don't need Nagash to form the bone for them. He doesn't reforge their souls or anything like that. It is a lot of individual heroes that all work together to constantly sustain the forces of the Ossiarch Bonereapers. Now, these are the very elite forces of Nagash's armies. He has his legions of Nagash, which act as his not really auxiliary forces, but as his just bulk army. Now they do, I don't know, if I had to compare anything, it's like 40Ks, like Space Marines to Imperial Guard, if that makes any sense. And that means just generic zombies and skeletons, and Graveguard are pretty elite stuff, but they're not as elite as these guys. Even the basic troop choices in this book are more expensive than Graveguard are. I'm pretty sure, off the top of my head, I'm pretty sure they are. Because your basic battle line guys are 13 points a model. And they get 2 points cheaper when you bring 40 of them. So they become 11 points a model, so they're 440 points or 40 of them. And I'm going to go into detail about how I think they want to be run. Now, I could be wrong, because this is definitely up to the thousands of other people out there that have given more insight into this book than I have. Like I said, I've only read through this a couple times, but I've gotten a pretty good idea. It's actually a pretty basic book. All things considered. They don't have a whole lot of units released right away, though it is a lot. It's a good amount. It's not like it's only 3. But it's not as much as, per se, the Nighthaunt when it first came out. They seem to have a lot now. These guys have a lot of heroes, which is nice, which is what you want. You want options in heroes. And their basic troops across the board, not battle line, but their battle line and the rest of their elite stuff is pretty innumerable. You have a lot of options when you build them. You can do a combined arms force that includes cavalry and foot troops and elite foot troops, or you can kind of specialize into hordes, or you can do a full elite build. There's lots of options in that regard. We're going to open up with the allegiance abilities, so I'm going to try and, famous words, keep this short and sweet. The allegiance abilities for the Ossiarch Bonereapers, I believe they have access to I think it's 2 true allegiance abilities. They have the standard, when you're Ossiarch Bonereapers, you get to choose what legion you're from. There are 6 legions of the Ossiarch Bonereapers. There's one main one, the Mortis Praetorians. They are also known as the 10,000 cohorts. It is the bulk force of the Ossiarch Bonereapers. That is the one where you're going to find all your named characters to be a part of, including the Mortarch. So if you include your Mortarch, he can technically lead one of the other legions, and he doesn't take away from their ability. At least as it's written here. It says, if a model already has a Legion keyword on its war scroll, it cannot gain another one, but this does not prevent you from including the unit in your army. He just doesn't get the benefits of that Legion that the rest of the Legion does. Like I said, you have the Mortis Praetorians, which act as your main Legion, and the other 5 are kind of not really vassal legions, but they're like auxiliary legions that support the Bone Reapers, not the Bone Reapers, the Mortis Praetorians. Now you get you get 3 true allegiance abilities. And when I say true, I mean not the legions and not the lords of the Ossiarch Empire, which pretty much says what you're allowed to include in your army. Now, Deathless Warriors, this one's really good. Now, this is the expected 6 up to ignore damage if you're wholly within 12 of a hero. That is true in this case, but it also says that if you're wholly within roll a dice each time you allocate a wound or mortal wound to a friendly unit that has the Hecatos keyword. Now, you're curious what Hecatos is. Hecatos is like, if I had to translate it, something to be elite. If something has the elite keyword, you'll see it in keywords, you'll see Hecatos. It comes on 2 units that I noticed right away. I'll double check for a 3rd one later when I get deeper into this review. But that's going to be your Immortus Guard and your Acropolis Stalkers have both the Hecatos keyword. So right away, both of those units do not need a hero beside them to give out the 6 up to ignore damage. And in fact, they give out a 6-inch wholly within bubble of ignoring damage as well. You're actually going to find that a lot of units in this army don't need heroes to have that 6 up to ignore damage. They pretty much have it across the board. So if they have the Hecatos keyword, they can ignore damage. Or if you're wholly within 6 inches of a unit with the Hecatos keyword, you can ignore damage. Or is wholly within 6 inches of a friendly Mortarch Hecatos. Or if you're wholly within 12 inches of a friendly Ossiarch Bonereapers hero. On a 6, that wound or mortal wound is negated. Now, the second one I said there, if you're wholly within 6 inches of a friendly Mortarch Hecatos. Mortarch Hecatos are your unit sergeants. So not only do you ignore damage on a 6 if you're wholly within 12 inches of a Bonereapers hero, you ignore damage on a 6 if you're near a flat-out Hecatos unit, which is, again, the elite units. There's 2 of them, maybe 3. Again, I'll let you know if there is. And if you're wholly within 6 inches of a Mortarch Hecatos, which is, again, the unit champion. So here's an example. Your Mortarch Guard, your basic battle line, those are your 25mm foot infantry bone construct models that are going to make up the bulk of your army. In most cases, the leader of that unit has a 6-inch wholly within bubble of giving everything ignore damage. Now, that one isn't as good because roll a dice each time to a friendly unit that has the Hecatos keyword or within 6 inches of a... Okay, yeah, never mind. So as long as your unit is wholly within 6 inches of its general, then your unit gets to ignore damage as well. So in certain circumstances, your unit could be outside of 6 inches from its sergeant, not general, sorry, of its sergeant, and then they wouldn't get the ability. But as long as they're wholly within 12 of another hero, then they would. It's very rare will that come up, but always try and keep in mind when you're playing Ossiarch Bonereapers, or if you're playing against them, if their units are spread out very thin, they actually might not get the 6 up to ignore damage because they have to be wholly within 6 inches of the unit's sergeant, or if they're within range of a hero, or another Hecatos unit. But it's very rare that these armies will not get that 6 up to ignore damage. There's only a couple of units in this army that won't get it, and I'll get into those detail when I get to them. That's it for Deathless Warriors. I went on a little bit long there, but it is a very unique take on it. This is, again, Nagash's very elite armies, so they have they're much more likely to be resilient to damage than any of the other death armies out there. Now, also, the second one is Ranks Unbroken by Descent. This is insane. This is a very powerful ability, and I want to imagine, you know what, it doesn't even feel like you're paying the points for it across the board either, because your units aren't overly that expensive. It's not like you're bringing 10 models to a game. You're still bringing a sizable force like any other army out there would bring. This is definitely not this could be a horde army. You could bring 120 models and still have a lot of points to play with in the form of Mortarch Guard. It's going to be incredibly hard to get your hands on that stuff as well. After the allegiance abilities, I'm going to go into detail about how you buy this kind of stuff, at least from what I've learned. You're going to have a pretty sizable force, and Ranks Unbroken by Descent, your entire army immune to battle shock across the board. Now, that is very upsetting. That is insane. You will never, ever have to worry about battle shock with this army, and that alone, that guarantee is nuts. I mean, like, maybe you're thinking that's not a big deal. Oh, that is huge, guys. You can get, your horde can get charged by some incredibly big Death Star unit, take 20 casualties, well, you still guarantee you have 20 guys left, and you don't have to use the command point on Inspiring Presence. Mostly because the next part of this rule, this is one big rule, your army's not allowed to use the generic command points. So your army, in addition, your army cannot use command points. So you just can't use command points. Instead, you have a second resource called Relentless Discipline points. Now, when it says it can't use command points, that means you can't use the automatically run 6, which sucks because that's a huge ability. Inspiring Presence, doesn't matter, you don't need it. You can't reroll charges for units near heroes, and you can't reroll saving throws of 1 with all-out defense. You can't all-out attack, and you can't, all-out fire or volley fire, I think it's called, where you reroll hit rolls of 1 for shooting. You can't do any of those. It sucks, I know. But, and there's certain scenarios which allows you to use command abilities. Oh, Realmscape features. Or if you're playing in a certain realm and you have the command ability from that realm, you can't use that either. And other certain scenarios that require you to use command abilities, unless you house rule it, if you're doing a custom scenario, they can't use those ones either. But relentless discipline points. It's all, for whatever reason, this was insanely hard for me to remember. Now, the way these work is you get 1 per hero, and you do these at the start of the battle round as well. So it doesn't matter if you go first or second, you're getting these no matter what, which is nice. Because normally you only get a command point at the start of your hero phase. So if you're going second in the battle round, say you didn't even buy one or don't have a battalion, then you're not starting with any. In this case, you always get them no matter what, because you get them at the start of a hero phase. Battle round. So this is how it works. You get 1 for every hero you have automatically. So if you bring the maximum of 6 heroes, you get 6 a turn. You get an additional 1 for every liege you have. Yes, I had to double check that. It is lieges included. And you get for every War Scroll battalion you have as well. So right away, you get 1 for every hero. If that hero so happens to be a liege, you have certain liege level heroes in here. There's different tiers of heroes. There's Mortisans, lieges, and actually that's pretty much it. Lieges are your like close combat, like honorable general or overall commander level hero. Thinking of like a Carrion King or Lord Celestant for the Stormcast Eternals, Mighty Lord of Khorne, that kind of thing. That's that level of hero. They bring to the table 2 relentless discipline points. There we go. I'm doing better. I'm remembering them. They bring 2 of them to the table. You get 1 for every War Scroll battalion you have, and then also if you have Catacross, is his name? Catacross, who is the new Mortarch of the Ossiarch Bonereapers. He brings you an additional 3. So let's say you have him on the table and 5 lieges. Hypothetically, I mean, in this case you wouldn't, because you're going to want, then in 2,000 point game you can bring 6 heroes. You're going to want to bring wizards as well. But they give you your points. I'm going to call them Relentless Discipline Points, RDPs. Whatever. Relentless Discipline Points. You're going to get, so that's 10, 11 plus 3, so that's 14 base points right there if you had 5 lieges and Catacross. Now, you also get to roll a d6 for each Ossiarch Bonereaper unit in your army. Every time you, and that's for every minimum squads, right? They count as well. So say you have, 11 units, including your heroes. You get to roll a d6. On a 6, you get another Relentless Discipline point. And these act as command points for your own personal War Scroll, but your own personal War Scroll command abilities in this book, in the meat of this book. All your heroes have them, and they do things you'd expect. Reroll hit rolls of 1, or bonuses as you charge, things like that. Running and charging, ignoring terrain on the Stalkers. I'll go into a couple of details and give you the gist of what they do. Now, the only problem with these is every time you go to generate new ones at the start of every battle round, you lose the ones you didn't use last time. Now, my test game, I was playing with a very minor force of these Bonereapers, and I was limited in my heroes. I had one named character who he only really generated me 1 because he was the famous Vokmordian or Vokmortian. He's like the famous necromancer. He's the Mortis Praetorians. He works for them, and he goes to collect tithes. Now, he didn't really give me too many of them, but you know what? Through the fact, and I didn't have any War Scroll battalions either, but through the fact that I was rolling every turn for all of my units, I got a lot, enough to work with. Now, a proper army of these guys are going to have a ton of them every turn, and you're going to be using them on command abilities all over the place. You really feel like a commander, making sure that, okay, these guys need to shield wall, they're going to shield wall, they're going to shield wall, these Stalkers are going to move through terrain. You're just doing cool things every turn all the time. You're doing them on your opponent's turn, you're doing them on your own turn. And for yourself, it's a very highly interactive army. You're always doing something. You're always using these discipline points. You feel like you're commanding a very elite army. And that is the coolest thing about these guys. Now, the next thing they get is an Unstoppable Advance. Now, this is a generic command ability in the book that you can use your Relentless Discipline points on. This is something you usually want to do turn 1. You can only use it once per unit, and you give that unit +3 to its movement characteristic. If they're wholly within the same restrictions as the Deathless Warriors, so wholly within 12 of a hero, wholly within 6 of a Mortarch Hecatos, so your own unit's leader, the Hecatos of your unit, or an elite Hecatos like the Immortus Guard or the Stalkers. And they just get +3 inches to their movement. Now, the elite guys move 6, your basic battle line guys move 4, so you make them movement 7. So your first turn, it very much feels like Tomb Kings. I didn't mention this earlier. This is very obviously Games Workshop's reimagined Tomb Kings. A lot of you out there already know this. There's a lot of similarities between the armies. And this pretty much gives your entire army, because again, you're going to get a lot of these discipline points, especially if you're going second in the battle round. Oftentimes you want to go second, you just give your whole army +3 movement. Everything across the board +3 movement. They all march forward. This is kind of like that old Tomb King. It used to be a prayer back in 6th edition, and in 7th and 8th edition it got turned into a magic power. I can't remember what it was called, but it essentially let you double the move of your Tomb Kings. They got to move again, and that kind of represented the unstoppable advance of your undead army. So this is the 3rd allegiance ability you get. Now it keeps things pretty under control, right? All you have to do is manage your points. Remember that you can make your units move faster, which is great for grabbing objectives. That's a great way to counteract the fact that you don't have access to that automatic running 6 ability. Just give something +3 movement. That's also acceptable. And obviously after you give 3-inch movement, you can still run and charge in addition to both of those. It doesn't limit you in any way. It just straight up gives you 3 inches of movement. Yes, I just wanted to double check that. And that's it, other than the fact that you can be any of your legions. Now, when it comes to buying these guys, if you watch the video here and you check out the game that I played with Jasper and you want to get into these guys, you're like, yep, that's it, I want to get these guys, you have to be quick. Now, I know I'm going to try my best to get the company a huge collection of these guys because this is a proper undead army. Now, it's not your mindless undead walking ever. Everything has a purpose. It's a spirit of a great warrior stuck in a construct and slave to Nagash's will. This is a cool army. This is a big sell for me. Even Matt hates death, and even this army to him has piqued his interest, which is a little concerning for me. And maybe concerning for you because there might be a lot of Bone Reapers on the channel in the upcoming future. But maybe there won't be because of this issue. Now, Games Workshop is doing a stifled release of the Ossiarch Bonereapers. They are releasing them. Currently, they released a box, and in this box contains... Now, I may be wrong here, but this is what I played with. The box either contains one of these two things. It probably contains 2 squads of Mortek Guard. Or maybe it's, yeah, this makes the most sense. It's 1 box you buy, 2 squads of Mortek Guard. It can be built with either their spears or their blades and a shield. It contains the Acropolis Stalkers, which are the, if you ever played Black Temple and Burning Crusade, the ossuary boss, who it's the four-sided head that flips its head around. These are giant constructs of bone. Their head has 4 different faces, and it represents the four souls of these master warriors that are entrapped inside of it. And each one of these warriors is a master in a different style of fighting. So every combat phase, yourself and your opponents included, you choose its fighting style based on what soul you want to take over the construct. So it can either be Master Bladesman when it comes to you get to reroll all your hit rolls. You could be like a barbaric kind of barbaric nature where it comes to rerolling all wound rolls. You could be a defensive master, parry stance or something like that, where they get to reroll all their saving throws. And the last one is overall pretty good offensive one. It's like precision killer or precision strike. You get to add 1 rend and 1 damage to all your attacks. They have a lot of attacks. I think that one's the best, but they're all very situationally good. If you're fighting someone with -1 to hit, you're hitting on 3s and 4s, you just reroll all hit rolls instead because you just want to guarantee you get the hits. If you, for whatever reason, are already rerolling hit rolls, because there's multiple ways to do that, you can reroll wound rolls if you just want to guarantee get damage. If there's one thing there, you don't need to overkill, you just need to make sure you damage it, then there's that situation. In most cases, if there's something with high armor, you want to increase rend and increase damage. That's a nice combination there. And you get Vokmordian or Vokmorshan. Haven't figured out how to pronounce his name. I think both are acceptable. He is the Tithe Collector. He works for the Mortis Praetorians, so that is Catacross's, Catarcross's, I'm not too sure how to pronounce his name, his main legion, the 10,000 cohorts. He essentially goes from each of the nexuses, which are the terrain feature you get, collecting the tithe. And if there's ever an issue in collecting the bone tithe, well, then he brings his Ossiarch Bonereapers along with him and makes sure they pay. Now, one weird thing about him, and I'll get to him when I go look at his war scroll for you guys, he doesn't really fit in the book very well. He's got good rules. By all means, he's got great rules, but he doesn't actually get to use the spells in the lore here. And this actually might be errated to give him the Mortison keyword. You have to have the Mortison keyword to cast spells. And Mortison is another way of saying Ossiarch Bonereaper Wizard. But it doesn't say that. It says you need the Mortison keyword, and he doesn't have the Mortison keyword, so you can't use the spells there. Now, we have our command traits. We have our We have Cavalos command traits, which is the Liege Cavalos, which is your high level tier of excellent warrior. You can take command traits. There's 6 of them. I haven't looked at too many of these, but oftentimes I find most people take a legion, and again, when you take a legion, you have to take the command trait, the relic from that legion, and you get the abilities from that legion. In most cases, people take the legion, so these are often forgotten these days. They're actually kind of something of the past. Now, they're good. You could definitely make your own custom ones. I haven't, again, this isn't all about what's the most powerful combination. This is my first insight. So right off the bat, for your big high-level tier hero, you receive 1 additional point at the start of the battle round if he's on the battlefield. The battle trait negates a wound or mortal wound on a 5-up instead of a 6-up. That's actually really good. Immortal Ruler. He's got a 12-inch bubble of ignoring damage on a 5-up instead of a 6-up. Dark Acolyte. He's a wizard, so your close combat based character, your high level character, is a wizard that knows 1 spell from the lore of the Mortisans, and they can attempt to cast that spell in their hero phase and attempt to unbind 1 enemy spell. So they can unbind the spell and cast a spell, and they know 1 spell. But he doesn't get to know Arcane Bolt or Mystic Shield, so he only gets to know the 1 spell from the lore. Peerless Warriors, unmodified wound roll for an attack made with a melee weapon by this general is a 6. They inflict 1 mortal wound on the target in addition to any normal damage. I don't see that one being picked too much, but sure, why not? Maybe if you roll. If you're the type of person that likes to roll, then there you go, you got that one. Hatred of the Living, add 1 to hit rolls for attacks made with the melee weapons by this general and their mount, unless the target has a death keyword. You find a lot of these, there's a whole lot of hatred for the living in this book, like absolute hatred for the living, and it's rerolling. In some cases, it's rerolling wound rolls of 1, in this case, it's rerolling, or +1 to hit. So it's kind of hard to remember that stuff, I suppose. And Lifesteal is the last one. At the end of the combat phase, if an enemy models were slain by wounds inflicted by this general's attacks in that combat phase, you can heal up to D3 wounds allocated to this general. Sure, that's fine. There's other ways to heal in this book, though, so that's like, why would you not really need to take that. If you had to take any 2 of these, I don't think you need the additional Relentless Discipline points. I would probably take the Immortal Ruler. He's right there, giving everything a 5-up to ignore damage in an army that's already very defensive, which I'll get into shortly. That's actually a really good command trait. It's hard, and when you get really good command traits, you have you're struggling between taking these legions, because if you want to take that command trait, you can't take the legion, right? So you lose out on the legion abilities, which in and of themselves are very powerful as well. So again, I don't see anyone taking these command traits, though Immortal Ruler is quite good. Now we have Mortisan qualities. These are command traits for your Mortisans, which are your wizards, your support level heroes. Ancient Knowledge, additional point. Immortal Ruler, a 5-up to ignore damage instead of 6-up, and this is a new one, Dire Ultimatum. Subtract 2 from the bravery characteristic of enemy units while they're within 12 of this general. Not bad. Gravesand Bones. This general knows 1 extra spell from the lore of the Mortisans, which can be useful. He can't cast an additional spell, though he knows an additional spell. Though he can always just bring another hero if you want another spell, so that's not that ideal either. Oathbreaker Curse is the 5th one. Roll a dice each time your opponent receives a command point while this general is on the battlefield on a 6. That command point is lost. You don't gain it because you can't use command points, but you take away your opponent's. That can be pretty clutch. Though if you're going to use the Mortarch of the Bonereapers, then he has a good ability to deny people command points as well. So not really that useful. Soul Energy, you can reroll casting, dispelling, and unbinding rolls for this general. If you do so, he suffers a mortal wound after the effects of the spell are carried out, if any are carried out. Yikes. But re-rolling is pretty powerful, especially if you want to get some of the spells off. I didn't even look at the spells because I couldn't use them in the game I played. And now we have Relics, which only your Liege level characters can use. Mind Blade, pick one of the bearer's melee weapons. If the unmodified hit roll for an attack made with that weapon targets a hero is a 6, your opponent loses 1 command point. And that hero cannot use command abilities for the rest of the battle. Wow, that's super cool and pretty clutch. Then again, now the artifacts are always up for grabs, because the second you bring battalions, you're not worried about breaking your legion. Now you can take artifacts. That's a really cool artifact. You have to roll, is a hit roll 6? Yeah, hit roll 6. If you hit a hero with a 6 with this relic, you automatically take a command point away from your opponent, so they're always going to want to be blowing them because they're going to be afraid of that coming up. And they cannot use command abilities for the rest of the game. Now that can be super big if you hit certain heroes. I'm thinking, you know what, I can't think of any heroes off the top of my head, obviously Nagash, but why would you be fighting Nagash that's a big narrative loss. Or I guess you could be doing a training mission if those are a thing. But Lordly Phylactery is the other relic. Once per battle at the start of any phase, the bearer can use this artifact and they gain D3 Relentless Discipline points. So this could be clutch. Use it at the start of any phase. Come the combat phase, you get D3 Discipline points because you're out and you need to do shield walls or be more offensive in certain situations. That's only if you ever, I'd say only take this if you find yourself constantly out of discipline points and you're just starving for them. You're probably not using them to their full effect in that case. Or, I don't know, maybe this relic will be super useful. I didn't get a chance to use a relic because I had a named hero as my one hero. So obviously I couldn't take a relic. Subtract, the next one, scroll of command, subtract 2 from the bravery characteristic of enemy units that are within 6 of the bearer. Sure. The sacred parchment carried to war by this liege lends him a part of Nagash's immortal authority. Okay, I was curious what the narrative of that one was. Gravesand Boneplate. At the end of the combat phase, roll a die for each enemy unit within 3 of the bearer. On a 4-up, they suffer a mortal wound. Ways to do more damage, sure. I'm thinking the Mind Blade or the Phylactery are better so far. Marrow Pact. Once per battle, born by this liege blind those of you. What's Marrow Pact? Once per battle in your hero phase, pick one enemy unit within 6 that is visible to them and roll a die. On a 3 or more, that unit suffers D3 mortal wounds and you can heal 1 wound allocated to the bearer for each mortal wound inflicted and not negated. The only problem is it's 1 per battle, so it's not that great. And you still have to, and it still has to work on a 3-up. I don't like relics like that. Once per battle and it only works on a 3-up, I wouldn't take that. Helm of the Ordained. Add 1 to hit rolls for attacks made by friendly Bone Reaper units while their mounts. And their mounts while they're wholly within 12 of the bearer. Wow. 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 Plus 1 to hit for all Bone Reapers wholly within 12 of this hero. That's pretty good. That's really good. That's nuts. Plus 1 to hit across the board for all Bone Reapers and their mounts. Sure, whatever. Okay, you know what? I think that's probably my favorite one because that's quite powerful, or it seems immediately powerful. Now we have Tools of the Bone Shapers, which are your Mortisans and your support heroes. So we got the Artisan's Key. Before you use the Bear's Bone Shaper ability, which is a healing ability. On a 4 or more, you can either pick 2 units within 6 instead of 1, or you can pick 1 unit within 6 to be affected by the ability twice. So essentially, you have your one hero, your Bone Shaper, who likes to heal your Bone Reaper, kind of like the Invocation for Legions of Nagash. So you can pick the same unit twice on a 4-up, or you can pick 2 different units on a 4-up instead. Yeah, it's not bad. Load of Saturation. At the start of your hero phase, pick 1 friendly Bone Reaper unit other than the bearer that is within 1 of them. Until your next hero phase, the Deathless Warriors battle trait negates wounds on a 5-up instead of a 6-up. That's really good. But you can only pick 1 unit that's within 1 instead of every unit wholly within 12. So one of those is obviously better than the other. The Crafter Gems. In your hero phase, you can heal up to 3 wounds allocated to the bearer, and once the total number of wounds this artifact has been used to heal during the battle equals 3, it cannot be used again. So you can heal up to 3 wounds, so you can choose to heal 1 wound every turn, I guess. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that one either. It's okay, but sure. Oh, right, so that was the Bone Shaper Mortisan. So that's the specific Bone Shaper Mortisan, and then there's 2 more for the Soul Reaper and the Soul Mason. Again, more support heroes. I'm gonna pass on those because they aren't overly interesting, and I apologize, but I'm trying to keep it a little bit shorter as well. And now we'll go over the spell lore. Now this is what I want to talk about because you get Vokmortian in this box, right? But he is not a Mortisan, so you can choose or roll for one of the following spells for each Mortisan in a Bone Reaper's army. Now here's the cool thing I didn't get to. In this book, you get to use Nagash and Archon the Black, and I wouldn't be surprised if you see Archon in every list, or if you see the other Mortarch, Katakos in every list as well. Nagash, sure, why not? Nagash is really powerful. He actually went up 30 points, is 880. I'm gonna go over both of them because they both actually got a pretty hefty nerf, unfortunately for them. But very necessary for them because they could both be kind of cheesy in certain regards. Now the lores, and again, this is if you any of the Mortisans which aren't available yet because you can only buy the 1 box and they're doing the stifle release of everything. I have no idea what the release schedule for that stuff is though. Again, stay tuned and find out because if you want to get this army, like I said earlier, you're going to have to watch and pay attention to the second Games Workshop releases them for order or pre-order, buy them right away because they're going to be gone fast. That's my prediction. First spell is Arcane Command. On a 5, you get D3 points. Another way to get more points, all the better. Again, if you find yourself starved on points, that's a great spell. Empower your Nadurite weapons, which all your weapons are across the board. A lot of your weapons are Nadurite weapons, and you'll see why. Casting value 5. Pick 1 friendly Bone Reaper unit with the Nadurite weapons ability that is wholly within 24 and visible to them until you start your next hero phase. Cause 2 hits to be scored on a 5 instead of a 6, or 4 instead of a 6 for charging Death Rider. So essentially, Nadurite weapons. If you're curious, I kind of mumbled there a little bit. Every time you roll a 6 to hit with a Nadurite weapon, and you'll see the ability on your War Scrolls, you get 2 hits instead of 1. Now there's a cavalry unit. Well, with this spell, you'll get off on a 5-up instead of a 6-up. Now there's a cavalry unit that charges with spears they get it on a 5-up. Now, if they have the spell effect on them, they get it on a 4-up instead. So that's quite good. Every time you roll 4 to hit, they hit on 3s. Yeah, they hit on 3s. You get 3 hits instead of 1. That could stack up quite powerfully. Protection of Nagash, casting value of 6. Roll a dice each time a wound or mortal wound is allocated to the caster. The caster. On a 5, that wound or mortal wound is negated. If any wounds or mortal wounds are allocated to the caster and not negated, and the caster is not slain, remove them from the battlefield after all wounds or mortal wounds have been allocated, then set them up anywhere on the battlefield more than 9 away from the enemy units. After setting up the model, the spell is unbound. Wait a second. Well, that's pretty cool. This actually works really well on Archon or Nagash, because Archon or Nagash know all of the spells from this lore. Nagash can... Wow, Protection of Nagash can protect himself. Oh my gosh. Wow, that's super defensive. That's super durable. Okay, well, you know what? I'm getting off track here. So the caster ignores wow, it's everything. All wounds or mortal wounds on a 5 or 6, and this also stacks with the 6-up to ignore damage that comes from the Allegiance ability, because in Age of Sigmar, those abilities stack. So you can choose to roll that one first and then roll these ones afterwards. And then after all of the wounds are allocated, if any of them do get through, then you take this model off the table and you set it up anywhere that is more than 9 away from enemy units. After setting up this model, yeah. You have to remove them too. So maybe that's not that great, because someone could be gamey with that. Well, not gamey, but figure out how to work around that one. So essentially you pick your model up and you put it wherever you want. More than 9 away from enemy models. But say Nagash, you get your Nagash or your Archon into, or Archon's charged by something cheeky and you don't want him there, make sure you always have protection up on him. And that way he'll ignore most damage he takes, and afterwards he gets himself out of that situation. You can literally go anywhere you want on the battlefield, more than 9 away from enemy units. That's a nut spell. That's super powerful. That's going to be clutch in a lot of games. Make sure you pay attention to that one, especially if you're bringing Archon to the table. For your lower tier heroes, you don't have to care about them that much, because they don't have the capability of casting a lot of spells, whereas Archon and Nagash can cast a bunch of spells. Nagash can cast 8, so there's no reason not to use it every turn. I wouldn't be surprised if Nagash wants to cast pretty much all of these spells, because he knows all of them, and so does Archon. It's pretty nuts. But this actually makes sense as to why they got their nerf. So you're going to want to run them mostly in Ossiarch Bonereapers, and they're still pretty good in the Legions of Nagash, obviously. The next one is Reinforced Battle Shields. It goes off on a 6. You pick one friendly unit armed with shields or Nadirite battle shields that is wholly within 24 until the start of your next hero phase. Each time a wound or mortal wound is allocated, they ignore it on a 5. Wow, that's nuts. Like on a horde of 40 Mortek Guard. Man, what is going on here? What is going on with this book? These spells are bonkers good. Man. Whatever. They ignore damage on a 5 or 6, in addition to the fact that they ignore damage on 6s. This is a very defensive army. In my game I played, I thought I chose to play defensively. This is a very defensive army in every way, shape, and form. The 5th spell is Drain Vitality, casting value of 6. Pick an enemy unit within 18 that is visible to them until your next hero phase. Reroll unmodified hit rolls of 6 for attacks made by that unit, and reroll unmodified save rolls of 6 for attacks that target that unit. That's pretty good. Oh, wow, that's really good. Just another good spell. Wow, what a surprise. The last spell, Mortal Contract. Casting value is 7. This might be pretty powerful if it's a 7. Pick one enemy unit within 18 of the caster that is visible to them. For the rest of the battle, roll a die at the end of each phase during which any attacks made by that unit inflict any damage on a friendly Bone Reaper unit. On a 3 or more, that enemy unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. You cannot pick the same unit to be affected by the spell more than once per hero phase. The caster binds an enemy to a deadly mystical contract. Wow. Wow. So you choose an enemy unit for the rest of the battle. Anytime they inflict wounds on one of your units, they take D3 mortal wounds on a 3-up. So you cast it on one thing, next turn you cast on something else, cast on something else. You just like you're getting everything stuck in these legally binding mortal contracts. The lawyers of Age of Sigmar, I guess, are the Ossiarch Bonereapers. And that's it for the spell lore. Now, that's really good. Those are. I'm just sorry. I'm getting distracted. I'm just thinking of all the powerful combinations with the Nagash or Archon. Like, okay, that reinforces the state that I think Archon is pretty much going to be in every single game. You see, he is powerful in this, especially with those spells. Now, the Mortis Praetorians. Now you have your legions. Now, when you play Bonereapers, you can be one of these 6 legions. The Mortis Praetorians, they are your main legion. They're everything. Like they're the bulk of everything, right? All of your named characters are from the Mortis Praetorians, so if you want to include them in any of the other 5 factions, those other 5 factions are, again, just like auxiliary legions. They support the Praetorians, or they go off and do the more minor things. The Praetorians are the main force. Now, that means you have to use the Praetorians, but if you're doing like narrative things but they aren't the most powerful, is what I'm trying to say. Sorry. They can be. I'll go over the Mortis Praetorians because it's the most important, and then I'll tell you what the other ones do in a gist. The Mortis Praetorians, the Dread Legion, they reduce the bravery characteristic of enemy units is it wholly within 12? Yep, that are just within 12 of any of your Mortis Praetorians. They have a command ability that they all have access to, and it's again the same restrictions, so it's a counter-strike. If any of your units are charged, and those units are wholly within 6 of any Hecatos units, are wholly within 6 of a Hecatos Guard model, or wholly within 12 of a hero, they get to reroll all hit rolls. Your army, very defensive army, walks up the board, gets charged, and he's like, okay, they were charged, they reroll hit rolls, they reroll hit rolls, they reroll hit rolls, they reroll hit rolls, they reroll hit rolls. Across the board. That alone is super powerful, and that's a good reason to have a lot of these discipline points. Relentless discipline points. Now, the command trait you get is Catacross is chosen once per battle at the start of your hero phase. If he's on the battlefield, you can receive D3 additional discipline points at the start of your hero. Oh, you have to do it at the start of your hero phase. If it's going to be one of those clutch turns, like I need more points, I get D3 more once per battle. Not the best command ability, but sure, why not? Or command trait. And then the artifact of power is Artificer Blade. Pick one of the bear's melee weapons, change the red characteristic of that weapon to -3. -3 is a very rare rend to get. That's really great on the Mounted Liege, which is, he does 3 damage on the charge per swing. He's got 3 attacks as well. So 3 attacks pretty much getting through on anything. It's always good. And that's it for the Praetorians. Their counter-strike ability is very powerful when used on mass. So it's going to stop anyone from really wanting to charge them on mass, because a lot of the time, you go, I go when it comes to Age of Sigmar combat. It's a very elite, very powerful army or legion you don't want to fight on mass. Now the Petrifex Elite, these are the very defensive ones. They have Unstoppable Juggernauts, +1 save across the board. That's very powerful when it comes to the fact that a lot of these units in this army can reroll their saving throws. Not just failed saving throws, all saving throws. So a lot of units in your army have 3-up armor saves at this point now, re-rolling. So if you're fighting an army that has no rend or very little rend on mass, yeah, they're not killing anything in this regard. I think this is my favorite one for power. The command ability is Bludgeon. It's improved the rend characteristics of your weapons in combat. You can do your general command traits +2 wounds. And the Godbone armor is the first wound allocated to the bearer as a relic is ignored every turn. So again, very defensive. That ability alone, +1 save to every single model in your army across the board is increased by 1. Now again, if you're using named characters, they won't get it unless it works for Nagash, which I'll double check later on. Though I don't think he's got a specific Nagash. No, he would be. I can't imagine that would. Geez, that's kind of nuts. Yeah, it actually might work on Nagash. I could go into greater detail, but giving Nagash a 2-up save is kind of weird. Because he doesn't actually have the Mortis Praetorian keyword, so he might actually be able to get the Petrifex Elite. Because I know him or Archon can lead the forces, though I don't believe they take away from it either, so I'm just going to take a quick look. Yep, the rule is you can include Archon or Nagash in your army and they gain the keyword. And they gain the Ossiarch Bonereaper keyword, and then all Ossiarch Bonereaper models in your army gain the certain keyword of a legion. So giving Nagash or Archon +1 of their saving throw is a pretty big deal. I think Archon only goes to a 3-up, but Nagash goes to a 2-up armor save. Yikes. Archon goes to a 3-up, yeah. That's pretty much it for the Petrifex Elite. And now the next ones, they didn't really interest me all that much. The Staliarch Lords are the Mounted Cavalry Legion. So this is the one you want to run pretty much all cavalry. If you're the type of person that loves cavalry, this is the one for you. It's increased speed. It's tricks to get more into combat, do more damage when you're in combat. Twisted Challenge is a command trait that they have, and they have the Bone Mount. You roll D3 additional dice when they use their charge ability. Okay, so it's just all about charging on mount. It's all about more mobility and just utilizing the most out of your cavalry as you can. Now the Ivory Host is odd. They're like the elite version you want to run. They got the shiniest golden armor. They got the best kind of constructed bone. The other guys have the hardest bone. These guys have the best kind of bone. At the start of the combat phase, for each Ivory Host unit that is within 6 of a model that currently has any wounds allocated to it, they become subject to rage until the end of that phase. Add 1 to hit rolls made for a unit that is subject to rage, but subtract 1 from save rolls. Not a huge fan of that one. So yeah, ivory hosts are outwardly the most magnificent of all the Ossiarchs. Their polished cream, bone, a startling counterpoint to their golden armor, and lustrous amber soul trap gems. Yet their macabre glory hides the howling, snarling need to kill. When wounded, they fight like rabid animals and swiftly overcome even the largest foes. So, I don't know, maybe they're the hardest to control, maybe they're the most filled with rage. Again, I'm mostly interested in the first two. Now, the Null Myriad are the anti-magic ones. They are the most resistant to magic, and they have their ability that kind of proves that point, and then their own hold fast and their command trait and their artifact all kind of go along with that as well. Now, the Crematorians are the last one, but they're my most favorite one. They are engulfed in fire and are very explosive. So the way they work is every time one of your Crematorium Bonereapers is destroyed, after all the attacks are resolved, for every model that was destroyed, you roll a d6. And on a 5-up, the unit that inflicted the wound takes a mortal wound as they blow up and cause catastrophic damage all around them. And that roll is improved based on a monster or a hero dying, and it does... Oh, sorry, it's D3 mortal wounds. Add one to the roll if a slain monster... Yeah. So if a monster or hero dies, it's on a 4-up. If anything else dies, it's on a 5-up. So this is where you want like giant hordes of guard. And when they're charged, because they're eventually going to have to get charged because they're immune to battle shock on objectives, the only way to actually get them off that objective is to get down and dirty with them and try and kill them. And they're going to blow up and do a lot of damage to you instead. Or... both ways. So a third of your giant units die, they explode. I think that's probably the most fun one. That's the one I would love to run. But our army's not going to be painted as them. They're a lot. They have more ash and bone, and you can see fire in their rib cages, and you can get really creative with that one. In fact, I think a Crematorian army is going to look beautiful on the table. I highly recommend you guys go play that one because I think that's probably the most fun and the less. And the least cheesy if you're not looking for something really powerful. And that's it for the legions and all that good stuff. And now we're going to quickly go over what you get in this book, the type of units you get. Now, I've already gone over the time I wanted to go with, but that always happens, so I'm not surprised. And I imagine you're not surprised either. Now, the Bone Tithe Nexus is your terrain feature. And again, this represents what the Bonereapers have built nearby settlements that are... they're obligated to pay this bone tithe and to kind of keep the bones coming, right? Because these Bonereapers need bones to craft into these constructs to sustain their standing armies. Now, be it annually, biannually, or weekly or monthly, these people have to bring their dead to these nexuses and leave the bones there for the Bonereapers to come by and collect and mold into constructs. Now, what this does mechanically in game is it has to be set up more than 3 inches away from objectives and more than 6 away from the edge of the battlefield, and it has to be wholly within your territory. It's huge. It's like that big. You'll see it in the game. I used it. It does up to 4 things. It's called Deadly Gaze, and what this does is in your hero phase at any point, you could unleash up to you can unleash 1 of 4 punishments upon the enemy. 2 of them are at long range. Punishment of Death, you pick an enemy unit that is visible within 36 inches. On a 2 or more, they take a mortal wound. It just launches a little punishment at them, does a mortal wound. Punishment of Ignorance, you pick a wizard within 36. On a 2 or more, you subtract 1 from their casting, dispelling, and unbinding rolls until your next hero phase. That one's a little bit better. The Punishment of Death is clutch. If there's like 1 model on an objective within 36 inches, that's a great way to get rid of them. Punishment of Agony and Punishment of Lethargy are half the range. At 18 inches, but they are very powerful. Punishment of Agony, you pick a unit within 18, wholly within 18 on a 4 or more, they're -1 to hit until your next hero phase, so an entire battle round. And Punishment of Lethargy, this one is the most powerful. This one by far is the most powerful, but is only situationally useful. You pick a unit on a 4 or more, wholly within 18, they cannot run. And when they go to charge, they only roll 1d6. So that means even if they're just more than 3 inches away from your unit, when they go to charge, a 1 or 2 always fails. And they will have to blow a command point to reroll that. So they have a 1 in 3 chance of failing the easiest charge in the game. And if they're like 7 or 8 inches away, the second they're 7 or more inches away, they cannot charge with that. That is punishing, folks. And that's why it's the Punishment of Lethargy. That's one you're often going to be using. This is the closest thing to a Casket of Souls, I'd imagine. It looks very caskety because it's a mobile. It has all the bone and the collection all around it. It doesn't have a guy manning it like the old Casket of the Souls did, but it feels the same, you know? At least to me it does. In fact, the scenario I played is the scenario in the book with Jasper. It is Destroy the Nexus. So it was a narrative scenario built for the Bone Reapers to give you an idea of what they do. And hopefully you guys enjoyed it if you check it out. I had a lot of fun playing that with Jasper. He played Sylvaneth, if anyone's curious. They have their Path to Glory stuff, which is to be expected. They have 7 War Scrolls. They have the overall War Scroll that includes all of your other War Scrolls. So it's like that Mega War Scroll built of minor War Scrolls that you want to play at like 5,000 or more points, or maybe even more with these guys, who knows. You get extra Relentless Discipline points if you run it, in addition to the abilities from the other 6 battalions you have to run. You have a Mortec Shield Corp. You have a Mortison Trident, the Catacrosian Deathglaive, Mortec Ballistari, the Lance, and the Aegis Immortal. They all do different things. The Shield Corps lets you use their Shield Wall ability for free. The Trident lets you cast 1 extra spell on your 3 Mortisons. So you have to bring 3 different wizards, and they can all cast 1 additional spell if they're near the Harvester, which is that big monster that the Bone Reapers get, and that Harvester is in combat. That one's super situational, not that great, but the fact that all your wizards get to cast 1 additional spell is amazing. The Deathglaive is an extra move on 3 units, so you get to bring Harbingers or Stalkers, and they all get to do a free move. The Aegis Immortal is a way for Morghast Archai or a Mortis Guard to protect each other and ways to negate damage. So if they all stay near each other, it's a very defensive unit collective, and they all stand still and they all ignore damage and all that stuff. The Cavalos Lance is your cavalry lance. This one's pretty good. It allows them to fall back and charge in the same turn, and it lets them use their command ability. It lets them do mortal wounds on the charge for free once per turn as well. So you could have you have to have at least 2 units and 1 liege leading them, but they can all fall back and charge. And that alone is a very powerful ability, because you charge something, fall back, charge something further back, and you're constantly doing mortal wounds as you charge. They have a different mechanic for doing mortal wounds. Instead of it being like pick a unit within 1 inch, on a 2-up they take a mortal wound, you actually roll an amount of d6 equal to your charge roll, and then for every 6, that unit takes mortal wounds. So say you roll a 12 on the charge, you're only really doing a couple mortal wounds. It's not that powerful, but it is kind of cool. And the Mortec Ballistari, you need 2 of your crawlers, which are your new catapults, and there's ways to protect them. You need guard in this unit as well, and a Bone Shaper, and you can pass wounds off to the guard instead of the Ballistari, so you always have your catapult shooting. And that's it for them. Now, onto the units. I'm going to try and skim through these very quickly and give you an overall idea of what they do. Catacross is the Mortarch of the Necropolis. He is the overall leader of the Bone Reapers, right? We have Nagash as the overall leader of this hierarchy. You have Archon the Black to his right as his right-hand man. You have Catacross to his left as his general in his left hand. So these two lead Nagash's forces in general. Catacross is an amazing fighter. He has a butt ton of abilities. He's got a retinue of followers. This is the coolest thing. So if you've seen this model, you know what I'm talking about. He has got 1, 2, 3, 4 retinue followers. They are all on his display board with him. And essentially, he is only willing to fight you if you're honorable enough or worthy of his attention. So right away, he sends off followers to go and fight you instead of himself. And you fight with the followers first. The more wounds this model takes, he's got 20 wounds, by the way, with a 3-up save. The more wounds he has, or the more wounds he takes, he represents you killing his followers. Now, they could have done this in a different way, but this is probably the easiest way for them to do it rules-wise. Say he takes, He takes 2 wounds, you kill one of his followers, and then he takes 4 wounds, you kill another one, he takes 8 wounds, you kill another one, and then once he's taken 13 wounds, when he has at least 7 wounds left, you killed all of his followers, and then he's ready to come down from his little pedestal or his monument there. He picks up his giant shield, he picks up his spear, and he just starts beating the crap out of you. So then you have to fight him at full force, and that's when he's using his shield and all his other abilities as well. That's actually a really unique take on that. I'm very happy with his rules. Nagash, Supreme Lord of the Undead, can lead a Ossiarch Bonereaper army. Ossiarch Bonereaper army. He is, in all of his glory, very much the same. Now, with Nagash and Archon, you get 2 unique abilities because you have invocations of Nagash and invocation of the Mortarch Sacrament, which is Archon. This is a way for you to just easily give wounds back to your units. You can choose up to, Nagash lets you pick up to 5 summonable units of the Ossiarch Bonereapers, and you either heal 3 wounds to them, or you return up to 3 models, or up to models with wounds characteristic of 3 or less back to the unit, that usual ability. Now, Nagash did get nerfed, but it's understandable why he got nerfed. He lost the ability, and I'm going to assume that this War Scroll updates Nagash in general, and you always have to use this War Scroll, but it'll be on the app regardless, the Warhammer Age of Sigmar app. He does not know the spells of all Death Wizards on the table anymore, which sucks. It does a lot. But luckily, he knows the entire lore of the Ossiarch Bonereapers, which doesn't, in the end, is kind of the same. But this actually has scary connotations for the Legions of Nagash. This means Nagash might not know Von Hell's Dance Macabre anymore. He might not know the spells of the other Mortarchs anymore. Things like that, right? Like if the Nagash and Archon are both on the table, Nagash could cast Curse of Years much better than Archon the Black could cast Curse of Years. So you'd use Nagash for sure. But in this case, if you're just playing him as Ossiarch Bonereapers, then all is well. It's fine because you know all the spells already, but you won't know the built-in spells of the Ossiarch Bonereaper Mortisans, which is kind of scary. Other than that, though, I looked over him and it seems very much so the same. He gets an extra +3 to cast, Unbind or Dispel. Now it says Unbind or Dispel, which is nice. I don't think it said that before. So now he gets +3 to Dispelling, which was, come on, of course he would have that. He can cast an extra 5 spells, and he can cast 3 spells already, so he can cast 8 spells still, which is all the 6 spells from the lore, and his own 2 personal spells if you want to, so he can cast all that stuff, which is perfectly fine if he's at full wounds, and obviously there's lots of ways to heal him because of his own 2 spells. Now he doesn't have Vile Transference in this lore, like he does in Lore of the Vampires from Legions of Nagash, so he does lose that kind of healing capability, and his command ability stayed the exact same. Now, because he's Ossiarch Bonereapers, is actually a lot more useful because you have so much more of these discipline points. So you're not too worried about always keeping that one command ability. Now, to be fair, it makes all of your stuff, you get to reroll hit rolls of 1 and saving throws of 1 for your whole army, which is amazing, and your whole army is immune to Battle Shock. Doesn't matter for the Bonereapers because they're already immune to Battle Shock. And again, these nerfs aren't that bad for him unless you're playing him Legions of Nagash, assuming that everyone has to use the updated War Scroll in the Ossiarch Bonereapers, which they've done in the past, so I would assume that is the answer, yes. And of course, he got updated. Actually, one nice update is the Frightful Touch on the spirits that surround him are unmodified hit rolls of 6 now, as opposed to hit rolls of 6+, so that way modifiers don't affect that ability and you always get that ability. Now onto Archon the Black, and if I missed anything, I apologize. Again, it's kind of my first impressions of this, so it's very easy to miss kind of new things. Archon the Black, very much the same as Nagash. Frightful Touch is now unmodified 6 rolls a hit, but I don't know if Archon could cast 3 spells before. He could if he was part of the battalion from the Lords of Sacrament, but now he can cast 3 spells. So that means he could probably cast 4 spells in Legions of Nagash. I could be wrong, though, in that regard, so don't take that with a grain of salt. Curse of Years got a huge nerf, massive nerf. Now the way Curse of Years works, fundamentally, they're very much the same. You pick a unit within range, 18 inches, you can make it, you can still make it 24 inches with First of the Mortarchs for his command ability. Again, you're more likely to use the command ability because you have so many command points. It's not even funny. You get like 10 a turn or more, or like 20, who knows. Anyways, you roll 10 dice, every 6 up they take a mortal wound, then you see if they ignore it. And then for every wound that they suffer, you roll another die. On a 5 or more, they take another mortal wound. If they suffer mortal wounds, for every mortal wound they suffer, you roll another die. And on a 4 or more, etc., etc. And this goes to 3 to 2 to 1. But it doesn't anymore. It used to go to 1, and now 1s always fail. So you're only looking for 2-ups, which is still very effective, though it's much less likely to instantly kill a horde of 40 or more, which is what it was mostly used to do. Now, if you're trying to kill something with 12 or like 14 wounds, and you get down to that 2, and by the time you got down to that 2, you've already taken at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mortal wounds, so then 6, 7, 8, you could still maybe fail to kill it, but on 2 or more, especially rolling 2 dice, chances are you're going to probably kill something. And that's pretty much it for Archon. Again, he knows all the spells from that lore as well, but he can cast 3. But he also does not know the spells of Death Wizards nearby him anymore. He lost that ability, which sucks. But yeah, it is what it is. Actually, Archon the Black's points, he's at currently, I can't remember what he was at before, but he's at 360 now. I believe I think he went up 20 points. He's a little bit more pricey. But I wouldn't be surprised to see either Archon in every game or Catacross in every game. So, I mean, I guess you could technically run both Mortarchs. If you're curious what Catacross is going to run you points-wise, he is going to be... I got it right here, I promise. I can't find it. Oh, there he is. Wow. He's 500 points. That's many points. That's a lot of points for him. Is it worth it? Actually, I have no idea. I haven't played with him. I've only seen what he does on paper. You can never really tell if something's worth points until you play with it to see how these abilities actually work if you're using them properly. Maybe he is worth 500 points, but boy, golly, is that your 25% of your army in a 2,000 point game. I'm not a huge fan of putting 25% into one model. Technically, it is a model with a retinue of like 5 dudes, but I mean, those dudes aren't that great, but each one of those guys gives him a separate, very powerful ability. So as you kill them off, he loses these powerful abilities, but still, yeah, maybe he is worth 500 points, who knows. And now what they're doing with these books is they're releasing named characters right away, which is nice. You have Arch Xanthos, who is like the Liege Cavalos, the leader of Liege. He's the Arch Cavalos. So Cavalos is like your commander, right? Not commander-in-chief equivalent, but like just an overall army commander. Like if this guy was your general, it would make sense. Now he's the Arch Cavalos of them, so he's the best liege, and he acts as a liege, so you get extra discipline points with him. You have your Liege Cavaloses. These are all mounted heroes, by the way, so they have bonuses on the charge when they do damage. They have and the Arch Liege Cavalos, whatever his name was, I had forgotten. It is Xanthos. He hates the living. Absolutely, you get to reroll wound rolls of 1 if you're hitting order and destruction, and he hates the mortal followers of chaos. So if you're fighting chaos, but it says mortal followers of chaos, but it works against all chaos, you get to reroll all wound rolls against chaos forces, even if you're fighting demons, I guess. Anyways, you have your unnamed Liege Cavalos, which is your mounted undead leader guy, your general of your army. You have your Mortisan Bone Shapers, which is your first of 3 Mortisan Wizard support heroes. This is the guy that gives you a very similar ability to Invocations, where you get to pick a unit within 6 and you can heal up to 3 wounds, or return up to 3 models if there's wound characteristic of 3, or bring a model back if they have a wound characteristic of 3. Now, with that relic I mentioned earlier, on a 4 or more, you could choose the same unit twice with this guy, or choose 2 separate units within 6. The Mortisan Soul Reaper, this is a more close combat based guy. He's got a scythe, much like a Carrion Wraith. It works almost actually identical to a Carrion Wraith. Instead of force hit, it's 3s to hit, -1/2 damage. It's got Frightful Touch, so every 6 to hit is 2 mortal wounds instead of its normal damage. And he's a wizard. They have built-in spells. The Bone Shaper is an anti-horde spell. He casts out a storm of shards, and you roll a d6 for every enemy unit within 18 inches. For every 6, they take a mortal wound. You pick one enemy unit, though, and every model within 18 inches of that unit takes a mortal wound. It's not that great. Now, Soul Burst is nuts. It goes off on a 7. If successfully cast, you can either roll 1 die for every unit within 3, or 1 dice. So you roll 1 dice for each enemy unit within 3, or 1 dice for 1 enemy unit within 18. Actually, it's not that good. I thought it was 3 dice for every enemy unit within 3, and 1 dice for every unit within 18. On a 1 to 2, they take a mortal. On a 1, nothing happens. On a 2 to 3, they take a mortal wound. On a 4 up, they take D3. It's actually not that great. 1 unit within 18 takes D3 mortal wounds on a 4 up. Not that great. He's better in close combat, but he's a wizard and he knows spells from the lore. So having a guy who's good at close combat knowing spells is not a bad thing. And also, I should note that he is literally all close combat based and a wizard. Now, the Soul Mason is a more advanced wizard. He's a level 2 wizard. He's the only level 2 wizard out of those 2, because the other ones are cast 1 and cast 1. So they're level 1 wizards. That's the term I like to use to let you know that a wizard can cast 1 spell or 2 spells, unbind 1 or 2 spells, things like that. The Soul Mason, he's okay in close combat. He's got a staff that is 2 attacks, 4s and 3s, -1 D3 damage, so he's kind of not bad in close combat. He can cast 2 spells a turn, and he's got a spell called Soul Guide. You pick 1 Bonereaper unit wholly within 24, so huge range, and you get to reroll hit rolls of 1 for attacks made by that unit. But he's got an ability called the Mortek Throne. Now, this is a model that sits on a throne and floats around. He only moves 5 inches, but he's got fly. Oh, he doesn't have fly. Never mind. I assumed he had fly. I thought it was a palanquin with fly. But he moves around, and at the end of your hero phase, on a 1, nothing happens. On a 2 to 5, he can cast Soul Guide a second time, even though he already cast it, breaking the core rule of the game. On a 6, he can cast it D3 more times. Obviously, you want to cast it on multiple units, but it's got a range of 24, so it's massive. So you can give up to 4 units, rerolling hit rolls of 1. And it goes off on a 6, so it's not that hard to pull off. And then Vokmortian is the named character I was talking about earlier, who collects the Bone Tithe. He's a necromancer, but he doesn't have the Mortisan keyword, so he's not allowed to take any spells from the lore. He's pretty good in close combat. He can tell one guy within 1 inch to not fight him on a 5-up, 1 model. So a monster that wants to go try and kill him on a 5-up, you have to listen to my legally binding contract that says you can't hurt me. You have to go hurt that guy over there instead if you can. And he has got 2 spells. He knows Arcane Bolt, Mystic Shield, and Mortal Touch. Oh, you know, I'll finish Mortal Touch. It's like Hand of Dust. You pick a unit within 1 inch on an 8. You roll a d6 on a 5 or more, get it off the table because it's slain. Another great way to kill Morathi. Just slain. All right, no saves, nothing, 5 or more off the table. It's actually identical to the Reality Splitting Axe as long as the Reality Splitting Axe caused a wound. But this goes off on an 8. Kind of tough to pull off. This guy's pretty good if you have the Endless Spells along with you. And I want to go back to Archon the Black and Nagash very quickly because for whatever reason, they can cast Arcane Bolt and Mystic Shield as much as they want. They break that core rule of the game as well. I noticed that earlier when I was reading, but I had forgot to mention it. Onto the Mortek Guard. These guys are your baseline. They're one of your 2 battle line. Yeah, so your battle line are either your cavalry or these guys. That's your only options. And there's no way to make the other guys battle line by adding certain generals to your army. I just double check that now. So these are your only battle line options. Be that makes you sad or be that makes you happy, who knows? I'm okay with that. I don't care either way. These guys are quite good. If I had to compare them to anything, they're like Sequitors, except they are only, instead of being 2 wounds, they're 1 wound. They have a 4-up save, and they can shield wall if you spend a command point on them, and they can reroll their saving throws, so much like Sequitors. They're 10 more points than Sequitors, but they have double the attacks Sequitors have. And they have a very similar profile when it comes to 3s to hit, 4s to wound with a rend, 1 damage. They don't have the special big weapons that the Sequitors have, but they do have Nadurite weapons, so every time you roll 6 to hit with their weapons, it's 2 hits instead of 1. They can either take spears or blades. The blades are Ren 1. I prefer these because I think I'd run these in MSU. Lots of small, tiny units. And the spears have 2-inch reach, but no rend. But they're 3s and 4s still, which is nice. So it's not like you're giving up any offensive capabilities. Well, you are. You're giving up rend for more attacks. So obviously, in the case of a horde, you want spears. But maybe you still want blades, because they're 25mm models with a 1-inch reach, which is a very powerful thing in Age of Sigmar. And again, this is one of the first units that you're going to see with the Mortarch Hecatos. Hecatos? It's the one model that gives everything within a unit wholly within 6 to ignore damage or the ability to use command abilities. Now, this is where I want to note, if you have an army out there and you want to fight against these guys and maybe worry they sound really powerful, if you take out their heroes and their unit leaders, they lose a lot of abilities. These guys can't shield wall if they lose their sergeant. So if you have, I'm thinking of things like Cygors or Gorgons or the Giants, if you can single out a model in a unit and kill it, that's a big counter to these guys. They lose a lot of their capabilities. Now, if you're running Archon the Black or Nagash or Bone Shapers, they can reanimate these models back to the unit because you get to reanimate whatever you want back to a unit. But if they don't have those, which I'd be very surprised, that's a good way to kill them off or to start hurting them. Then you have your Death Riders. I talked about these guys a little bit earlier. They are your bonuses on the charge. They're pretty much the guard on horse. They get 1 more attack with they have the exact same weapons. They have the spear or blade. They get extra attacks on 6 to hit, but they have 1 more attack each. Instead of 2, it's 3. They have 3 wounds instead of 1, and they have 4-up armor save and a movement of 12 instead of 4. So they're quite good. Now we have the Immortus Guard. This is your first elite. This is a Hecatos unit. They have the Hecatos keyword. So they act as a conduit for that 6-up to ignore damage to everything wholly within 6 of them. But these guys I find quite good. They have Dread Halberds, 2 attacks each, reach of 2, 3 to hit, 3 to wound, rend 2, which is super high, 2 damage. Now they're 200 points for 3, but their command ability is called Crushing Assault. So they have their shields on their giant halberds they're killing you with. Now every time they pretty much push, they don't actually move, but it reminds me of a unit that pushes forward and stabs. And like you spend a command ability, and if they're still within 3 inches of something and they haven't killed it, they get to fight again. Now it's not immediately fight again. Yeah, so the wording is, if you do so, if this unit is within 3 of an enemy unit, it can make a pile-in move and then attack with its Nadirite Blades shields for a 2nd time. So maybe you get to do it immediately, though other ones similar to this have said immediately in the past, so I'm guessing that something else gets to fight and then they push forward with their shields and try and kill you again. So a squad of 3 of these guys can put out a lot of damage, because that's 2 attacks each, 3s and 3s, -2, 2 damage. If you're running the Mortis Praetorians, you get to reroll their hit rolls, all that good stuff. And they have Soulbound Protectors, so they take damage for heroes nearby them. And Deadly Combination, if the unmodified, and they also get to attack with their shield, so they kind of bash you with their shield, and they stab you with their halberd. They take some ground, they push forward, hit you with their shields again, and stab you with their halberds. If you ever roll a 6 to hit with their shield, it's a mortal wound in addition to its normal damage, and they have 2 attacks with their shields as well that hit on 4s, 3s, no rend, 1 damage. These guys can put out a lot of damage, and they're not as defensive as the next guys, but they do have a 3-up save. So if you're running them as the 2nd Legion I mentioned, they have a 2-up armor save. and 4 wounds each. Pretty nuts. The next elite unit, which I'm gonna guess is, oh, maybe they just build into each other based on the kit. Yeah, kind of looks like they'd be able to. Yeah, you know what? Maybe in that box you could choose to build the Immortus Guard or the Acropolis Stalkers, though I'd be surprised that we didn't get either. So I can't confirm any of that, so again, grain of salt there. The Acropolis Stalkers, these are the 4-headed guys that have 4 different souls in them when it comes to combat for the Ossiarch Bonereapers. You get to choose a stance at the start of every combat phase. You can do Blade Strike, you get to reroll hit rolls, so you're a Blade Master soul. You can do your Blade Parry aspect, so you get to reroll saving throws, so you're a defensive master. The Destroyer aspect, so the all-out kind of barbaric master, where you get to reroll wound rolls, or the Precision aspect, so you're Master Bladesman, or you're kind of wait for the perfect opening. You have increased rend and +1 damage. Out of all 4 of those, I think that's one you're going to be using mostly, but they're all amazing based on the situation, right? So you won't need to reroll hit roll. Like if you're fighting something that's like -1 or -2 to hit, you want to reroll your hit rolls to make sure you get hits. But in a lot of cases, or if you're playing the Mortis Praetorians and they're charged, they get to reroll hit rolls anyways for command point. So maybe there's like 2 things left and you absolutely have to kill them. So you do reroll hit rolls because they wound a little bit better. Or if they're already rerolling hit rolls, you choose to reroll wound rolls to make sure they die. Because they already have rend built into their attacks. 1 in 3 of them can have dread falchions, which are 2-handed weapons because they have 4 arms, they have 2 of them. These are force to hit, 3 to wound, -2, 2 damage. If you're using precision strike, that's -3 damage a swing with 3 attacks. And again, these guys are the same points as the Immortus Guard, or the Immortal Guard. Is it Immortus? It is Immortus. 3 models, 200 points. It would very much seem that that's the same kit, but I mean, I could be wrong. And then we have the Mortec Crawler, which is the Catapult. It's got 3 different ammunitions. They're all 6 to 36-inch range, so if they're charged by something, they can't shoot because they won't be able to shoot the thing in front of them. They have to shoot the thing in front of them. They don't have any way to ignore that, and they're not good in combat. So you definitely want things protecting them. You don't want them being charged. The basic is they shoot skulls at people. 2 to hit with 3 attacks, 3 to wound, 5 damage per shot. No rend though. No rend. So it's very situational what you want to shoot these at. But it's got 2 different types of ammunition that you can use these once per game. And these crawlers are huge, I'm pretty sure, based on what I've seen in the images. And they are going to be 200 points each. So kind of pricey. But with these 2 types of ammunition, understandably so. We have Cauldrons of Torment. You pick 1 enemy unit that is in range of the attack, so 6 to 36, and you roll 1 dice for each model in the target unit. You add the modifier for the Cauldron of Torment shown on the table above to each roll. If the result is equal to or greater than their unmodified bravery, they take a mortal wound. Sorry, 1 model in that unit is slain. Wow. So hypothetically speaking, because you roll 1 die, and you modify, and the more wounds you take, you get negatives to this roll, so it's harder to pull off. So at half wound is -1, and then -2 at the lowest bracket. Say you're fighting Skaven, they have bravery 4. You hit a squad of 48 guys, half of that squad is dead. You just killed half of that unit. That's again 1 per use ammunition. Or if you are a hero, you don't have to roll to hit. This is a perfect way of killing heroes with low bravery. You say they got bravery 4 or 5 or 6. And then you roll 6, they're dead, right? Stuff like that. The next one is Cursed Steel. This one actually gets better the more damage your Mortec Crawler has. So it kind of shoots a curse back at the enemy. Cursed Steel, you do not use the attack sequence. You pick 1 enemy unit and you roll 2d6. Add the modifier based on the table. If the result is equal to or greater than the wound characteristic of the target, it is slain. So again, you pick a model within range and you kill it. On 2d6 if you roll equal to or more than its wounds. So something with 12 wounds, you roll 2d6, you have to roll 12 and you kill it, that's great. This is also great at killing heroes because you don't roll the hit. So say it's a hero 6 wounds being really annoying, or it's a Nighthaunt hero, it's hard to kill and they're very important for the army. On average, you're going to kill it. The more wounds you take, the more likely you are to kill it. Because at its lowest bracket, you actually get +3 to your roll. So if it's at its lowest bracket and you shoot at something with 12 wounds, you're actually killing it on a 9 or more on 2d6. But again, 1 time per use ammunition. And the last new unit is the Gothazar Harvester. I'm going to sum up this video very shortly after this. I pretty much talked about everything I want to talk about in this first impression. It's very easy for me to go overboard on this kind of stuff because I'm very excited for this book. The Harvester is a 200-point monster, 10 wounds, 4 up save, not very defensive, and it doesn't really have any way to get on its own to augment its defenses other than the fact that he'd probably be near something that gives him a 6 or 200 damage. Now to note, both this and the War Machine I just talked about are not Hecatos, so they don't get to ignore their own 6 up 200 damage. They're going to want hero support nearby them, or at least a unit sergeant nearby them. Now the Harvester is a pretty good monster. He can either take the sickle-bladed arms, which makes him better at killing hordes of things, or he can take bludgeons, which makes him killing better at not like anything but hordes. The sickles get to reroll hit rolls if the unit has more than 5 models, or the bludgeon, every time you roll a 6 to hit, they suffer 2 mortal wounds and the attack sequence ends. So it's pretty much anything with high armor saves, right? They already do 2 damage. They have 6 attacks. So 6 attacks, they do 2 damage each. Every time you roll 6 to hit, it's a mortal wound. They hit on 3s, wound on 3s, rend 2, 2 damage. And the bludgeons and the sickles are the exact same profile, except the sickles get to reroll hit rolls. He's got hooves and tails to attack with. They hit on 3s, wound on 2s, -1, 2 damage. This guy does a lot of damage for 200 points. Very worth it. I'd probably bring 2 of them, mostly because of Bone Harvest. Now he does have a 16-inch range attack called Death's Head Maw. 4 attacks, 3 to hit, 3 to wound, -1, 1 damage. Not that great, but I guess it's something. I also forgot to note for Vok, the one named character Necromancer earlier on in the review, he's got a range attack that I forgot to use in the game, which I'm a little embarrassed about. But it happens. So if you go to watch that game, you're like, hey, you didn't use that range attack you just talked about right now. Well, I apologize. Now, to the one cool ability that the Bone Harvester has, or the Harvester has. It's called Bone Harvest. So you roll a dice each time a model is slain within 3 inches of this model. So roll a dice each time a model is slain within 3 inches of this model. That's your own models and your enemy models. On a 4 or more, you can pick 1 friendly Bone Reaper unit within 6 inches of this model. If you do so, and the slain model had a wound characteristic of 4 or less, you can heal 1 wound allocated to that unit. If the slain model had a wound characteristic of 5 or 9, you can heal up to D3 wounds allocated to that unit. Or if the slain model had a wound characteristic of 10 or more, you can heal up to D6 wounds allocated to that unit. If there are no wounds allocated to the unit you pick, you can return a number of slain models to that unit with a combined wounds characteristic that is equal to or less than the number of wounds you could have healed. So when I said this guy has no way to really defend himself, I lied. He can actually heal himself a bunch. So say you charged into a horde, you killed 10 guys, and he's got whatever, 8 wounds on him, you roll 10 dice for every 4 up, you can heal a wound to this guy. Now, if you're fighting more elite things, you can heal D3 wounds on a 4 or more. This guy's better, he wants to be in your hordes, including your own hordes, because they count towards healing. Because the terrifying construct collects the bones of the slain. And well, your Ossiarch Bonereapers are made out of literally bone constructs. So that works for him as well, I guess. So remember that. That doesn't work just for enemies, that's your own stuff. And that's pretty much it for the new stuff. You have 3 new endless spells: the Nightmare Predator, the Soul Stealer Carrion, and the Bone-Tithe Shrieker. The Predator, you summon it, it's a massive mortal wound bomb. It moves 2d6s every turn. It does D3 mortal wounds to everything within 3 on a 2 or more. It ignores Bone Reaper stuff. And when you summon it, you get to pick an enemy hero, and that's its target. That's the target prey. It goes to kill it on a 2. If you end within 3 inches of that on a 2 or more, instead of D3 mortal wounds, you do D6. And if he actually ends up killing his prey, it's automatically dispelled. Now the Soul Stealer Carrion, they like to do Soul Thief. Yeah, you get to you pick if any order, destruction, or chaos are within 6 inches of it during that phase. On a 1 or 2, you heal 1 wound allocated to the caster of this model. On a 3 or 4, you inflict a mortal wound on each chaos, destruction, order thing within 6. On a 5 or 6, you do both these things. And then anything visible to this model is also visible to the caster. It's okay. That's not bad for spells. So you cast the bird, and you can use the bird as a line of sight beacon for the caster. So again, that's actually really good for like Nagash or Archon, because you can summon the birds, you fly the birds off, and then you can use them as their eyes. The other ability is okay. It's not great. If you roll a 5 or 6, you get to heal a wound and do a mortal wound. Otherwise, you just heal a wound or do a mortal wound. Now the Bone-Tithe Shrieker is quite good because a Portent of Doom. It's the one thing it can do. It goes off on a 5. You subtract 1 from the bravery characteristic of those that are within 12. Bone Reapers are immune, as you'll see with literally everything. And then no escape. Add 1 to hit rolls for attacks made by Ossiarch Bone Reaper models that are target a unit that is wholly within 12 of this model. So you summon this the Shrieker. It's like a little obelisk with heads on it that are screaming. And you get within 12 inches of an enemy. And anything that targets that one enemy is +1 to hit. That's really powerful. So that, like, all of these endless spells are very powerful for this, and they're even more powerful because of this one reason. Now, you're not going to want to cast these with Nagash or Archon, because every time you cast an endless spell with those models, it gets soul linked to the caster. It's both one boon and a negative to it as well. I know you're probably thinking, oh, whatever, endless spells, those are pretty bad because they just come back and hurt you. Well, Like all the other endless spells and judgments and prayers and invocations coming out with these new books, they cannot hurt the Ossiarch Bonereapers, and in fact, only the Ossiarch Bonereapers can move them. So whoever gets to go second in a battle round gets to move predatory endless spells. These are all predatory, but only the Bonereapers get to move them because they're soul linked to the caster. So the rule is, when you go to move soul linked, when you go to move predatory endless spells, all the soul linked predatory endless spells have to be moved first. In addition to that, only the soul-linked predatory endless spells, or sorry, the army that the predatory endless spell is soul-linked to, the owner of that army is only allowed to move the endless spell. So you always control the spells, no matter what. Even if you're going first in a battle round, you move all your soul-linked spells first, and they stick around, right? But the downside is, if you're ever soul-linked to an endless spell, you're -1 to all your casting until it's gone. And if the caster is ever slain, the spell is automatically dispelled as they can no longer sustain it. So it's kind of like a concentration spell from 5th edition D&D in a way, right? Like you can only focus on one of them. So it's both good and bad. I like Games Workshop's take on these. And I don't think I mentioned it earlier, but I had kind of hinted at it when I said certain things when it comes to the battalions. You're allowed to use Morghast Archai and Morghast Harbingers in this list as well, because they look very Ossiarch Bonereaper. I would imagine that they're kind of just based off of them, Archon and Nagash, because they all look very similar to that. They're very elite. They got that black carapace kind of looking armor, right? They have not changed at all. They're 210 points each for 2 of them, so they're 105 points a model. So I think they went down 10 points per the unit. Their rules are very much the exact same, which is fine. They were okay at best in the Legions of Nagash, so they're okay at best in here. They aren't they are Hecatos. Well, would you look at that? They have a 6 of 2 ignore damage. I kind of messed that up in the game, so you can make fun of me on that in the vault. It didn't really matter too much because there's so much access to the 6 of 2 ignore damage that they pretty much had it the whole game anyways. There was one moment where they didn't have it, and it's a 6 of 2 ignore damage, so it can be clutch, it can't be clutch. Sometimes it's pretty clutch. The last thing I want to note with these guys is that they don't have any allies. And if you include Nagash or Archon the Black in your army, you're not allowed to take mercenaries either. So no allies allowed, and you can't take mercenaries if you want to play with Archon the Black or Nagash in the Force. For whatever reason, it's just a random stipulation. If you don't bring either of them, then yes, you're allowed to bring mercenaries. Don't know why. But no allies in this Force, no Legion of Nagash, no Night Haunt, no other Death Army at all. The only things you can bring are the things in this book. Or a mercenary company if you don't bring Nagash or Archon the Black. I think I've talked your ears off long enough. My throat is sore from all the talking. I am going to honestly just sign off there. I'm going to remind you all that there is a battle report in the MiniWarGaming Vault where I played these folks at 1,300 points. I played the Mortis Praetorians, which is, again, the main legion. And I played them against a Sylvaneth list. It was a very defensive army on defensive army. So you get to see a lot of the mechanics from the Bonereapers, and I am very excited to play more of these guys in the future when we have a more well-rounded out list, especially something that I personally would like to build. It's going to be hard not to. I would definitely want to use Nagash in one 3,000 point game one day, and I definitely want to use Catacross and probably a good 2,000 to 3,000 point games as well. If you're not a Vault member and you want to check out that game I played to get a little bit more insight on how the Ossiarch Bonereapers mechanically play and perform, click on the link down below and you can get yourself a 7-day free trial, and you can just cancel it again right afterwards. We just find that most people stick around, right? It's a support from the Vault members that keep us going. It's a support from the Vault members that allow us to do things like this and to give you some insight into the game and hopefully entertain you with the battle reports that we pump out. As always, folks, I'll see you next time. I'll see you in the Vault if you stick around for that, and I wish you some happy wargaming. Hey there folks, Luka here, joined by my loyal test subject Jasper to try out some of the Ossiarch Bonereapers in this 1300 battle report. We are doing the scenario out of the new Battletome, Destroy the Nexus. The Sylvaneth have been kindly asked by a rebel human faction to assist them in destroying said Nexus. If you're not a Vault member and you want to check this battle report out and get some insight into the new Bonereapers Battletome, maybe you need that last little convincing point to push you over the edge to get that army, click on the link down below, get yourself that 7-day free trial, and you can check it all out and cancel right afterwards if you want. We just find that most people tend to stick around after they join up. See you next time, and happy wargaming.